For today's session, don't need any equipment, just yourself and just to be focused during it. So let's get ourselves into a nice comfortable position. If you need to give yourself a shuffle to get into it, however that works for yourself. And we can start with some deep breathing going in through the nose, out through the mouth, and just relax down where you are. Keep that breathing going. And when you're ready to, you can start to close down those eyes and really focus on that breathing there. Breathing in through the nose, out through the mouth. And try and slow it down there and bring the focus just into the breathing. So don't worry about anything else around you, just focus on the breathing in and the breathing out. This is doing several things. It's helping us to relax that nervous system by focusing on the breathing, but also help us to focus as well. It can help us to block out the distractions around us and to help to zone in on one simple task, which is just breathing in and breathing out. The more you do this, the more you notice yourself relaxing a little bit more into where you're sat. Notice how the weight sort of comes off your shoulders a little bit. Notice how the breathing impacts your body, how the chest lifts up as you breathe in, how it relaxes down as you breathe out. And now we're in this more relaxed state. Let's first of all thank ourselves for being here today. Often getting here is the hardest step. So just being here is a celebration within itself. So give yourself thanks for that. Also remind yourself that now you're here, the next hour we can remain focused on the task at hand, which is to do the breathing, the movements, all our mobility work and stretching to the best of our ability. And we don't need to worry about what's come before us today or what we're doing after the session. Our focus can be here on the next hour. All that stuff will still be there when we finish, so we can just focus on the now, be present, and move forwards with these movements. If you're not already, keep the breathing going, keep your eyes closed and sit up straight. As you breathe in, try and really lift that chest up, sit up straight, and as you breathe out, relax down. Whenever you're ready to, you can open up your eyes, keep that breathing going, and as we breathe in now, we shrug those shoulders up, give them a nice tight squeeze, and as you breathe out, relax them down. Extra clunky today. I woke up a bit funny with my shoulder, so maybe needs a little bit extra to get it warm. Essentially what we're doing here by squeezing those muscles in the trapezius here and then relaxing them down, we're forcing blood into that area and keeping it moving. So that's going to send all the nutrients, all the oxygen that we just breathed in to the muscle, and that's going to help it relax, circulate better, and give it a nice little warm up, ready for our more intense mobility work that we've got coming up. And this type of drill can work for quite a lot of your body. If you're feeling any like tension in an area, often tensing it and then relaxing it repeatedly, like we're doing here, can help just to sort of give it a bit of a reset almost and help things flow a bit more normally. So, say you've got, I know your forearm's hurting there, but you can give yourself a little extension and flexion in your wrist, just as an example. And that can help just to relax it off. So squeeze tight as you breathe in. And as you breathe out, relax it off. Good. Let's mobilize them a little bit more by going round in a circle with those shoulders, either direction. Nice, gentle circles round. Taking them through a good range of motion. Change direction, go the opposite way around. Okay, let's continue that rotation around of our shoulders, but now we're going to do the same, but with our hands on your shoulders, but they don't have to be like locked in place. They can just sort of glide on top here and just sort of rotate them around the best that you can. There's a few things to pay attention to here. Try and get the best circles that you can around here. But if you can't get like so, even if it's a smaller variation, that's absolutely fine. Just do the best you can here. Now, if you have difficulties with balance side to side, you can always do one side and then the other side. But just choose what works for you in regards to whatever works for your ability level. Getting around the best we can. We're just upping that level slightly from the previous movement we did. You probably feel a little bit more of a stretch, maybe in the chest if you're going backwards, in the back if you're going forwards. But wherever you're going, let's change direction. Go the opposite way. And let's increase that a little bit more by getting one arm. First of all, going round in a circle with the arm fully extended. If you can't do the full circle, just do a smaller version down to the side. Just getting that going around. And each one of these is a small step up from the previous movement. Which is what we want on that nice progression through, because if we went straight into doing this one, it can be good for like a bit of a warm up, like we do for our other bits. But in terms of getting blood flowing, specifically for stretching purposes, it's good to mobilize it a little bit more beforehand. Okay, with that same arm, let's go the opposite way around. change over to the other side and get that one going around either direction because we'll swap whenever I mention it. Change direction. Let's introduce a little bit of stretching here, nothing too intense and holding. We'll just do some reaching over to one side and then bring it down and over to the other side and just go back and forth between the two. Wait until you feel a bit of a stretch, or if you can't feel in that area, just some light resistance. And then move back over to the other side. If you can't get your arm up above your head, just come the best you can. So if that's across sort of your face a little bit more, or even lower down, wherever you can get that arm to, reaching over, feeling that stretch. Let's continue a similar type of movement, but instead of going over to the side, we reach forwards and then reach back. And as always, you've got two options here. You can reach both arms forwards if you can round your back as you do so. But if you struggle with balance like myself and you reach forwards, you can do one arm forwards and then both hands back. But I know some of you can do both hands forwards and get that stretch in there at the front. But for myself, it's a little bit easier to just do the one and then swap over. But as you come forwards, really try to extend that arm forwards, feel that stretch in the sort of the back of the shoulder area. And as you come back, open up that chest and feel that stretch across there. Reaching forwards, extend that hand. As you come up, open that chest, squeeze those shoulder blades together. Good work. Let's continue this type of stretching that we're doing here. And we go into doing one with our rotator cuff. So you can either do one hand or both hands for this, but extending up like so, rotating around. And I'm going to show it from the side as well, in case. And what we're aiming to do here is to have that shoulder up high, rotate it back, almost like you're throwing a ball, and then rotate it all the way back around to the other side and go back and forth between the two. Focus on that rotation more than anything here. Do one arm or both arms. Maybe going through a good range of motion until you feel that resistance or that stretch, and then rotate it back again. Good luck, everybody. Okay, again, we're going to continue this sort of stretching. It has got a name, I'll explain that in a second. But this one, we're going to do it where we get our hands in a prayer position and try and get our elbows together. Keep those elbows together as you reach up. As you reach up, they want to separate, but try and keep them together the best you can as you reach up, out, around, and then back to the beginning again. Palms together, elbows together. Try and keep together as long as you can. As you raise those arms up, they naturally separate and then out and around. As you do so, if you can feel in that area, you'll start to feel a bit of a stretch within the upper back, maybe towards the back of the shoulders area. And just repeating through that in your own pace. Let's change direction. So come up, hands together. Your elbows probably won't be able to come together just yet, but as you come down, bring them in, and that will slightly change the exercise in the focus area as you do so. As always, if you can't get your arms all the way above your head, just get to where you can. So you give it the smaller version, but try and focus on getting those elbows together for as much as you can through this movement. So here I'm trying to force them together, keeping them together all the way down, and then they open up again as I come to the bottom here. And that's where we really feel that stretch. Push that back. Yeah, well, let's do some shoulder rotations just to finish off this little segment. Go one way, then the other way. And give it a little go. Okay, let's have a little hydration break, and then we move into our spinal mobility. If you don't have a drink with you, I always recommend bringing one, even though the sessions aren't necessarily intense. It does require a lot of movement in our body, and having hydration helps keep things lubricated and keep things going. Hi there, fella. So you pop up then. So yeah, just to keep things flowing nicely in your body, it helps us to do those stretches and the mobility in that a lot more effectively when we're hydrated. Good. Okay, let's move into our spinal mobility now. We can start in our neck, as we always do, with some flexion extension. So looking down, looking up, and going back and forth between the two. Nice and gentle, nice and controlled. the best that you can do here. Don't worry about too much about the range of motion that you can do here, because the most important thing with doing any of this neck mobility is just doing the mobility. The reason being is our neck and our spine is designed to move, especially our neck. It's highly mobile. And it's designed to move a lot. It's designed to point our eyes in certain directions. And we have the eyes on the front being naturally a predator, whereas prey tend to have it on the side so they can see everything. They don't need to turn their head as much, so they don't need as much of a mobile head, but we do to point our eyes in a certain direction and point our ears in a certain direction as well. And it helps us to navigate our world. So it's designed to be highly mobile. So in our modern lives, we tend to not have to use it as much because we're not running around with spears and looking out for all the danger around us. We tend to be locked, looking at a screen, reading a book, whatever it might be. So we want to take it through the range of motion that it's designed to do to help it keep it healthy, help keep things flowing nicely, and keep it doing what it was designed to do. Yeah, when you find yourself looking down next, let's hold it there and just let gravity take over. And feel maybe a little bit of a stretch, maybe not too much here. Down the back of the neck. And try and almost let it curl over. You can do this by almost tucking the chin in and then the forehead come down rather than the whole head. It can be a little bit difficult for breathing reasons, so if you need to, you come out of it and back into it. Down a bit, doing a couple of looking ups and downs. And then the next time you find yourself looking up, let's hold that position. Keep the mouth closed to increase the stretch through the front of the neck. And if you want to increase it more, you can put your hand on the sternum and gently pull down. That's going to increase that stretch through the front of your neck here. Down to here. Looking up and looking down a couple of times just to come out a bit there. And then let's go into our next mobility for the neck here, looking side to side, left and right, back and forth between the two. And the reason we want to be doing these on a regular basis, I would recommend trying to do at least some of these neck mobility and the rest of the spine mobility every day, even if it's a small amount, is because our body reacts. It's very, very good at adapting to the stimulus that we give it. So if you consistently give it a stimulus, it will adapt to it. And that goes in both directions as well. So it's not just if you do the mobility, you get good mobility. If you don't do the mobility, you get poor mobility because it adapts to. It goes, oh, we don't need the resources to be able to mobilize this area well. So we take those resources and we put them elsewhere essentially. And that's why our bodies are constantly adapting to whatever the need is that we put on it. So if we regularly mobilize our neck like we do in these sessions, and I try to do every day, it tells our body that we need this mobilization, and it essentially sends the resources that it needs to this area to help it to keep this mobilization good and healthy, and that can help our long-term neck health, stop things like pain and discomfort in the area, which can help with things like headaches, tension, and all sorts of things. So regular mobility. That's a very simple way of putting it. I've done it. It's a lot more complicated than that, but I don't want to be here all day otherwise explaining it. But essentially, it's that principle of use it or lose it. You may have heard, and it works with all of our body essentially. Okay, next time you find yourself looking to the left, let's hold it there. Feel that stretch. If you want to increase that stretch, you can put your left hand on your right collarbone and gently pull it diagonally downwards towards the armpit. And that's going to help just increase that stretch a little bit more, which you may or may not be able to feel. Sometimes it takes a little time to get into the right positioning, but just do the best you can here. In that stretch, then it relaxes into position. Out of it, looking left and right again a couple of times. And then whenever you're ready to look over to the right side, hold that position. If you need to increase the stretch, take your right arm onto the left collarbone and gently bring it diagonally downwards towards the armpit. And again, there's a subtle thing here, so don't worry if you can't quite get that straight away. Have a play around with the hand positioning. You might be able to get a little bit more of a stretch in there. Down to it again, left and right. And then let's go into our lateral flexion. Let's bring one ear to one shoulder, to the other shoulder, back and forth between the two, nice and gentle. And this is always the one that we get a little bit more tension in probably than the others. Just take it easy to begin with as it warms up. You may be able to get a little bit more range of motion, but just do the best you can. Next time you build, you get the left into the left shoulder. Let's hold that position. And as always, if you need to increase that stretch, take the opposite arm, the right arm, drop it down towards the floor and increase that stretch there. Again, in this position with the ear over to the shoulder, you can play a little bit around with the head positioning, bringing it forwards a little bit, bringing it back a little bit, and finding areas where you may get a little bit extra of a stretch. But just go with whatever feels good to you. There's no hard and fast rule here. Let's relax out a bit. Do a couple of lefts and rights before we move over to the other side, which we will do now. So right ear to right shoulder, and then drop that left arm down, increase that stretch. That's good as well. Okay, left and right. Nice. And relax. Now, before we move on to the rest of the spine, I'm going to add in a little movement here. So, what I want you to imagine, you've got a piece of paper or a canvas in front of you, and on your nose sticking outwards, you've got a pencil or a paintbrush. And what you're going to do is draw a spiral with that, starting nice and small and getting bigger and bigger, nice and gentle movements, going bigger and bigger towards the outside of the canvas. So imagine the canvas is like a normal poster size. And then as you get to the outside, bring that loop, that spiral all the way back in again until you get to the middle. And then once you get back to the beginning, let's change direction and go the opposite way. So just nice, gentle spiral, getting bigger and bigger until you can imagine it's getting to the outside of the paper in front of you. And then once you got to the outside, bring it back into the middle. And then once it gets to the middle, let's change direction. Out. And back in. And one more time. Okay, so the reason we do that one rather than, so you might see some videos where they're doing the neck moving all the way around. The reason we don't do it like that is it could be a little bit straining in some areas. I know we've kind of warmed it up. This is a gentler version of that, essentially, that we're just focusing on the plane of motion in front of us. It kind of does 90% of the work that the other one does, but with a lot less of the risk of hurting yourself in the neck. So just a safer way of doing that exercise. And now let's move into the rest of our spine here. We'll start with flexion extension. So when you're ready to, you can start to extend through. Remember, arching back like a high jumper, curling over like a prawn, and going back and forth between the two. If you're like me, you've got some spasms. It may take you a couple to get into it. As you do, it'll start to loosen up. And you can increase that range of motion, but just go through a comfortable range with all of these spinal movements. It's less about how far you can go and more about just doing the movement that helps. Health down, turning over, trying to open up that spine, and as we go arch through again, but in the opposite direction. The reason we're curling forwards rather than just bending forwards is almost the same as like if you had like a hard plastic ruler or even a metal ruler, whatever, and if you try and bend it like in a curve, just like hold the ends and just bend it, it has a nice curve in the ruler and there's not much stress along the ruler. And that's kind of what we're trying to do with the spine here. If we bend forwards, although that's useful in some situations, it's putting a lot of pressure on one area. So if you're trying to bend the ruler but holding it halfway down sort of thing, where it's a lot tougher to hold, it's more likely to break in that situation. So you want to just a nice gentle bend in the spine, and that's similar. Hopefully that analogy works anyway. If it doesn't, just ignore me. But essentially we're just trying to nice and gentle go between the two positions, and each one of the vertebrae in our spine is doing a little bit of movement rather than like one or two doing all of the movement. That's essentially what we want here. So it spreads that load and that mobility across our entire spine rather than in just focusing on one area. And that helps us to mobilize the entire spine rather than one part doing all the work, which is where most people actually get their issues with their spine, is that they don't have good mobility all the way through each vertebrae. And one area, you know, maybe down here, maybe up higher, does all of the work. And that means it's getting all of the stress that the whole spine is designed to do. And when we do it how it's designed to, we have much less issues and a lot better movement within that area. Let's move into the rotation now. So we'll rotate round to one side, round to the other, and back and forth between the two, nice and gentle and controlled. For this movement, we don't have to necessarily worry about it as much because the spine naturally does rotate all of it together here. So each one of those vertebrae is rotating on maybe like 1 degree, but then all the way up the spine, all of that helps us to move around to almost 90 degrees. We would have 90 vertebrae, so it's probably more than a degree each, but you get the idea. I'm sure someone can do the maths. Lateral flexion, that's where we bring ourselves down to one side, and then down to the other, back and forth. And not only does it help with our spinal mobility, but it helps with keeping other parts of our body healthy as well. We've got our core muscles, and this helps to stretch them out a bit. So the core has several different definitions for a core muscle, but I essentially say it's anything that moves the spine is a core muscle. So we've got our obliques, our abs at the front, our lower back muscles, and they will help to move the spine and stabilize it as well. So keeping them healthy keeps that whole area healthy, but it also helps with some other things like our digestive system as well. We're moving about, we're keeping things flowing nicely. The digestive system is designed to work not just by itself, but with other parts of our body. One of those things would be just the act of walking helps with digestion. Obviously, for myself and lots of others here, walking isn't really an option. So we can simulate some of that by doing some of these movements, and we can help to keep things flowing nicer and help with our digestive system as well. So lots of benefits from moving rather than, outside of just the obvious as such. Good, and then let's do one that combines some of them together here by coming around in a whirlpool. Just like so, and this is similar to the one that we did with our neck with the paper drill, but now we're just going around, combining some of those movements together and the bits in between, so you can feel like you've got some flexion, lateral flexion, a little bit of rotation maybe. Let's change direction, go the opposite way. Yeah, give that a little bit of a shake off, and let's have one more hydration break before we go into doing some more yoga based movements and then into our meditation at the end. Good, okay, so the first one we're going to do here, don't worry if you're still drinking, I'll explain for a second anyway, don't rush yourself. The first one we're going to do here is called threading the needle. So essentially what we want to do is to rest our forearm on both our laps, or both our knees, sorry, and then what that's done is create this gap underneath my armpit here. And what we do is rotate round to one side and point up to the sky the best we can. And then as we come back through, we take our hand through that gap that we've created and then point it through to the other side. And then we go back and forth between the two. So point up and then thread the needle through and just back and forth between the two, nice and gentle, in your own time, in your own pace. But a couple of things to focus on here. As you bring that arm up, try and get that stretch across sort of this area in the chest and the shoulder as you come up, and as you come through, breathe out and relax into that position the best you can. Now, you may not be able to get as far down as I can, and that's absolutely fine. Just get to where you can and just go back and forth between the two. Now, if you can't get into that position at all, you can always bring the arm just across your body without threading the needle and just doing the best you can. Essentially, you want to go from a position that looks like this into a position that looks like this. But I know some of you may need to do different adaptations. And as you're doing this, I want you to notice what your spine is doing. So as we're in this position, especially the forward position, we've flexed over, but also the spine is rotated. So it's combining two of those movements together. And as we come up, we've extended the spine and we've rotated it in the opposite direction. So we're combining two of those movements that we've already done with some of the stretches that we've already done. So as we come out here, we're stretching the chest while there's extension in the spine, while there's rotation. And as we come down, we get a little bit of a stretch in the shoulder whilst there's flexion and whilst there's rotation to the other side. So combining lots of the things that we've already done together into what is essentially quite a difficult position to get into, but we've warmed up into it. We've done all the movements before, all the components, and now we can do it with a better range of motion and get a lot more from it. So we could do this sort of movement at the beginning of the session, but there's much more likely that we're going to have injury from doing this. But we spent, a good 40 minutes warming up into this. So we are much more supple, much more likely to get a good range of motion, to get more benefits from it than we would do otherwise. Yeah, let's switch over to the other side now. So put the other arm on the mat, reaching up towards the sky, And then coming down and threading the needle through. And from the ones I can see on screen, you guys are doing great. I'm sure the ones that I can't see are doing just as great too, but don't worry, you don't need to put your camera on. I'm sure you guys are following it just fine. Good luck, everybody. With this, just take your time, don't rush through it. It's not a competition here in terms of how far you can go or how fast you can go. It's just about feeling the movements, being focused on it, and noticing what it does to your body as you do it. So even if you want to just sit in a position for a second, so say this needle threaded position, you can sit in it for a second and just notice how it feels before you move on. Just do what feels right for you. There's no right or wrong way necessarily of doing it, as long as we're getting the movement in and most of the way there. Okay. We are going to add a extra little bit into that. So we did a little bit of this last week. I'm just going to make sure we've got enough space here to do this, but essentially we are going to just add in a little extra bit. So we're going to alternate between sides, but I'll show you that as we get into it. So first thing is that what we want to do is start with our arms out to the side. That's what I mean. I haven't got a lot of space, but then we're going to rotate round to one side, and then we're going to seesaw down. So the rear hand's going to drop down. The front arm's going to come up all the way up and over, and then we're going to drop down. So our knee is on, our arm is on the lap, arm points towards the sky, and then we thread that needle down and through. Then we come out of it again. And don't worry if you're confused on this first one, because we're going to go over to the other side now. So arms out to the side again. Rotate around to the right side. Drop the right arm down, the left arm comes up. Seesaw back again, so the left arm comes down to the lap, right arm comes up towards the sky, and then thread that needle through. Good. Let's continue doing it all together here. So back to the starting position, so arms out to the side, rotate round to the left. Left arm drops down, right arm comes up. And then back again, so the right arm drops down, left arm comes up. As the right arm comes down, it comes onto our lap, left arm points towards the sky, and then it comes down, threads the needle through to the other side, and then eases back out again. Good. I know when we're following my directions, you can be a little bit more robotic with it, so try your best to flow through this the best you can, rather than doing one position and the next. Do the best you can. So let's rotate to the right, right arm drops down, left arm comes up. And back again, seesaw, left arm comes onto our lap, right arm towards the sky, coming down, threading the needle through that gap, and then ease out a bit. Good, let's do one more on each side, so arms out to the side. Rotate to the left, left arm down, right arm up. Seesaw back, right arm down, left arm up, right arm onto the lap, left arm towards the sky, left arm comes down, threads that needle through the gap, pointing to the other side, opening back up, arms out to the side, one more here on this side, so rotating to the right, Right arm down, left arm up. Seesaw back, so the left arm comes down onto the lap, the right arm comes up, points to the sky, and then comes down, threads that needle through the gap we've created, and then easing out a bit into a relaxed position. Good. Before we go on to our mobility, let's just do a few more shoulder rotations here. Change direction. Good. I'm going to grab a drink before I do so, because I have to talk and it's quite dry in here. So let's move into our meditation now. So whenever you're ready to get in a comfortable position, it may take you a second just after all that movement that we've done. And whenever you're ready to just start some breathing in through the nose, out through the mouth, and over the next couple of breaths, you can close your eyes at any point. Focusing on that breathing, like we did in the beginning of today's session. Focus on that breathing in through the nose, out through the mouth. Now, for today, we are going to do something that we did in the first week of this block, which is a body scan. And if you remember, if you were here, essentially what a body scan is a check-in with our body and seeing how it all feels. We go from the top of our head, and I'll guide you through this as we do so, all the way down to the tip of our toes, and we just check it in with our body and seeing how it feels. We're not trying to fix anything here. We're just trying to observe and see how it is. The reason for this is often we can focus on one thing and neglect the rest of our body. Say you've got some achiness in the shoulder. For example, I have today in my left shoulder, it's feeling quite achy. So what I can do is usually is all my attention goes there, and I kind of forget about maybe there's some things in the other shoulder or my neck or whatever it may be. So this is an opportunity just to check in with each individual part of our body, see how it's doing, make sure that everything's going nicely, and we can use that for preventive measures. We can use that to help us just to analyze everything. So let's start top of our head in the crown of our head here and just check in. And there's not much feeling in the top of your head. There's not much nerve endings here, so we can come down into our forehead first of all. And if you need to, you can give it a wiggle, you can give it a rub and see how it is. This can maybe give you a good indication with the forehead and the eyes area of where you've had a good amount of sleep, whether you're quite tired, because we tend to put a lot of that in this area. So you can squeeze the eyes closed a bit, open them up, see how they are they aching, are they feeling fresh? Just noticing how it feels, and that can give you a good idea of whether you need some extra sleep or whatever it may be. We move down now into our cheeks and our jaw. For me, it's always difficult to assess because obviously I've been talking for the last hour, so my jaw is naturally feeling a little bit more on the achy side of things. So I always try and check in at other points of the day and see how it is. We want to keep an eye on all of these areas as we go through our day and our lives. So let's move around now into our neck, starting at the top of our neck. And obviously we've done quite a lot of movement into here today, a lot of stretching. So you may be feeling achy, but also quite mobile. So if you can give your neck a little bit of a move and notice if there's any areas that you feel any resistance here. And if you are feeling resistance at some point, notice what position that's in and notice what movements maybe we need to focus on. The flexion, the extension, rotation, lateral flexion. What areas there maybe you need a little bit more focus on. Move it down now into the shoulders. And again, I noticed that when I woke up this morning, I had a bit of an achy shoulder. It was just maybe out of position. So a lot of focus is on that side, but I also want to check in with the other side too, so I can give it a bit of a wiggle. And that's how it feels, and it feels pretty good to me. So I know that I back, focus a little bit more on that other side and make sure that's okay without having to worry too much about the other side that is okay. Moving down now into our arms, into the elbow joint, and we're mostly focusing here on our joints. The muscles are obviously important, but the joints are usually the bits that we need to pay attention to. As we come down now into our wrists, so you can give your wrist a little bit of a wiggle around, see how it feels. And then coming down through into our hands and our fingers and just give them a little wiggle. And I did notice something that on the same side as the shoulder is giving me a little bit of an ache, the wrist is also as well. So there may be some connection there. I may need to just have a look at what I need to do there to make sure that that is staying healthy. So something just to make a note of for later on. Let's move up back into our torso again, go through the rest of our spine. So give it some movements back and forth, and a wiggle. Notice how you're moving well. And we've only done this twice in this block, but the more we do this, the more we will understand what our normal range of motion is. So just do the best you can with your movements. And now as we go into areas that you may not be able to move, into our hips, just do the best you can in terms of trying to move, but whether you need to manually move your legs with your arms to move the hips slightly, whether you can shuffle in your chair, just notice how, if there's any extra resistance, extra movement, whatever it may be, but just observing the best that we can. Down into our knees, and here I just like to give my knees a little bit of a wiggle, using my hands, and just notice how it is. If there's anything going on there that's outside of the usual. Down through now into our ankles. And again, we might not be able to move them, but just put some focus there, see what comes back. And then down to the tip of our toes. Okay, we're going to do 3 deep breaths together. We're going to imagine we've got a light that's going to fill us from the tip of our toes all the way to the top of our head as we inhale, all together, breathing in. Breathe out. 2 more times from the tip of your toes. Imagine that you're lighting up. Breathe in. One more time. Breathe out. Return your breathing to normal. Open up your eyes. Give yourself a wiggle if you need to. And we are done for today's session.